Hi, Dr. Regan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. The demand for these workshops is so high that our March 2023 workshop is completely sold out. But there are still seats available for the only remaining workshop in September 2023. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Regan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in. Regan Robertson here, host of Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. Dr. Chad Johnson and I believe you deserve tips you can use to grow your practice, and that's why we began this podcast. Last year, we were honored to win the Best Podcast of 2021 award by dentalpodcast.org, and we are so excited to announce that we have been nominated again. If you have found value in hearing our podcast, we would sure appreciate your vote. Head on over to www.dentalpodcast.org to vote for Everyday Practices Dental Podcast so others have the chance to learn about us. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get to our latest episode.
Doctors, are you unintentionally getting in the way of hiring great candidates for the practice? As business owners, it is all too common to get in the way of hiring great people for a variety of reasons. And that's why co-host Dr. Chad Johnson and I have this special podcast episode with tips you can use the next time you go into a hiring cycle in your own practice.
That's
Dr.
right.
Chad Johnson, welcome to the episode of Everyday Practices Dental Podcast.
Hello. One of the last couple episodes, we talked about core values, and something that we talked about before we started hitting recording is we don't want another core values discussion, but I think what we're going to do is build on that, because one of the things that first came to mind is how we've changed our hiring strategy. Is first you had to back up and help yourself by defining as a team what your core values are, so that way you could walk forward with a person and say, do you align with these core values? And so I know it kind of gets straight to the point, Regan, but my premise being that, first you have to define who you are by as a team, not just yourself, like not who are you, but who are you, who are y'all?
Wait. Okay. Well, yes. Defining and going into core values is exceptional. Have you made hiring choices in the past and felt like, oops, I made a mistake? Or do you feel like predominantly you've had a pretty easy time with hiring?
No, I have not had a good time hiring. And I think that's anyone that's transparent or has only hired 2 people ever. Because the way I look at it, and this might be healthy or not healthy, but it's very pragmatic. I view hiring like dating. It's like dating in that, someone can put on their best show.
Yes.
On the first date.
Yes.
And yeah. So in their interview, and basically it's just like, okay, well, that's neat and all. Like, at least they're not a train wreck on the first time you visit with them, because if they are, it's a one and done date, right? The interview's over. Okay. Or do you give them another shot because for some reason they had just gotten a car wreck and sideswiped and their front corner panel is all dinged up, and now they have to
I love where this is going, because you want to cut through the chase, and you want to be able to both show authentically who you really are. I think that's what you're getting at. And so, so there is both the practice and the candidate are putting on their best suits. We're a great place to work for. There's no drama at all. We promise you. And vice versa. I'm a fantastic candidate for you. Look at all the shiny accomplishments I've had, but
You
both
just
are
mentioned
each
it
human.
too. If someone says, I just hate all the drama around offices, I normally go, red flag, you're the drama, and I
Yes.
hate to say that, but it's just like, boy, if you're overly concerned about the drama, it could be you. But yeah, so then you hire them, and then the honeymoon phase, then reality sets in. So like you said,
Yeah.
the authentic self, and that could be 6 or 12 months later. So I've had
Yes.
good hires that have gone well for a while,
Mhm.
or some that I knew within 2 weeks it was no good. So of course they say, be slow to hire, quick to fire.
Yes.
But I think a lot of dentists, especially the men, and this is just a personal judgment statement, but a lot of men, which are a lot of dentist owners, but we don't listen to our intuition, and so we'll be like, later on, a year from now, we'll be like, oh, I knew there was something we should have. But so if we did a better job at listening to ourselves, listening to our intuition, we would be quicker to fire. But back that up. Why even go so far as to be firing 10 people in a row when you haven't even defined who you are as a team, and then hire from that?
There's a framework, I think, for supporting your intuition. And that's what you were talking about with core values. So
Yes.
on this episode, I know it was really important for both of us to share tools that we use ourselves in that hiring process. So tell me, Chad, how you tangibly apply the core values in an interview process.
So now my office manager does more of the hiring. So she's doing the interviewing and the actual hiring and the onboarding HR process all together, start to finish. I give my blessing on it. So I want to meet the person, and it might even just be for 5 minutes. I'm easy enough going that I can get along with most everyone. And if they're willing to work, because listen, in this time of market, listeners, very well, you might not have 20 candidates, you might have one, and you need 3 assistants, and you got 1 application.
It feels like it's all over the board right now.
Of course.
One of the fellow podcasts that we have, Dr. Maggie Augustine on Victoria Peterson's Investment Grade Practices podcast. You can check it out. And it's the ultimate guide, I think, to hiring team is what the episode's called. But she had a copious amount of candidates apply. And she used her particular tip and tactic on it was how she wrote the ad, but it swings wildly. So you can have an abundance or you can have crickets.
Correct.
And the past 2 years it's really shown I think it's swung much more than it has in previous years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We all know it. So Dr. Bruce, you had spoke on this before on one of his podcasts, the Productive Dentist podcast. He spoke about hiring based on personality. But what we wanted to discuss was, well, whose personality, and what makes for a good personality? And is it personality alone, or do you just mean, you hire primarily on personality? Like, okay, they're outgoing, they're a go-getter. Because I get what he's saying, but it's also good to help us, kind of hash out and define, what does that mean? Because I'm a more extroverted kind of person, and I would not be hired in someone else's office that's, more extroverted if they were looking for, more introverted. If they were looking for a position for someone that, was in accounting, I don't know, or something like that, where it's just like, oh, that guy should be, doing podcasts, but not, accounting or something. And so then they're judging me based on that personality trait that they're looking for. But it wasn't just based on charisma per se.
No. Well, there's a big difference too between hiring dental clinical team and hiring dental non-clinical staff. So I think that there's both personalities will vary in what's required of each position. So when you're asking, what questions do you ask that pertain to knowing your team and your core values, and how to interview for that?
So our core values: attentive, compassionate, optimistic, reliable, efficient. Those are things that we're looking for. So we might offer in the interview, say, one of our core values is when people are attentive. Can you think of an example in the last week or the last month when you've been overly attentive or when you've been spot on with your attention, your attentiveness, and give someone as long as they need to find that out. And kudos to my coach for helping me through that process too. I mentioned her often, but Joanne, has helped us.
Shout out to Joanne.
Yes, has helped us process that quite a bit.
So, what I love about that, though, here's what I really like about, I'm into definitions. And so I think the term attentive can mean different things to different people. And we did talk about that in the core values episode. Go back a couple episodes, listeners, if you are interested in a deep dive on core values. But what I love about this is you're allowing them to define how they interpret attentive.
Correct.
I think that's brilliant. And then you'll know right away whether or not that's going to be a fit or not.
After we've asked that more open-ended way, then we can go into some of our definitions of attentive and ask if they can describe those. But sometimes you just know. And I have to admit, a certain percentage of the time, if you hire enough, you're going to be fooled.
Well, you can't get around that. It's gonna,
So don't get beat up about it either. If it's just like, oh, she seemed so nice, and then she came in and was all catty and stuff, and it's just like, listen, that happens. What do you do?
Well, the tip that I'm bringing to the table today is there's two different personality assessments. So I like to put the science with it to tell me. They're saying that they're attentive. This is how they've described a situation where they've been attentive. So, so that to me is face value. And that is really, you're going to have to trust that to an extent. That's where, both sides are going to have to trust each other in the hiring process. Two personality tests that have been brought forth by our CEO, Victoria Peterson, I think are amazing. One of them, Clifton's Strengths Finder. I'm going to say that right. Clifton Strengths Finder, and Predictive Index. Predictive Index is my personal favorite, and it looks for all the key characteristics that would make up attention to detail. Attentive to me is attention to detail, paying attention, making sure that you're on task, that you're present. So there's a lot of different words that can make up of attentive. Those, they just put in there, if you haven't ever taken a personality test before, it's not necessarily just fluffy and woo-woo. It will really tell you, does this person carry the trait of consistency? Mm-hmm. Does this person carry the trait of being a strategic thinker? Do they value connectedness? So for example, if I'm hiring for the front desk team in a dental practice, I'm going to want to have someone who values connectedness because they are going to be front facing. They are going to be dealing with people an awful lot. So that's going to be important. And if I'm hiring clinical, obviously consistency is going to be very important. We all know how consistent a hygienist's job has to be in order for it to be successful time and time again. So that is going to be a trait I'm going to look at. So they will answer it a certain way. You give them this test. It doesn't take that long to fill out. It doesn't cost that much. And what comes back is, to me, the test to what they're saying. It's like kind of giving yourself a little bit of extra insurance.
What was that last one called? Not the Clifton Strengths
Predictive Index.
Mm-hmm. Sounds so sciencey.
It's been I'm going to have to put this in post notes. So I will follow this up because it is accredited in some way that no other personality test is, but
no, this is different. These sound more psychosocial in a good way than, for example, the Enneagram. I'm going to throw that out there because that would be a hot button issue. But in my liking, what that one does is it says you are more like this, and so you should behave like this, and because you're in this group, for all due purposes, it's a horoscope.
The Enneagram, yes, I've taken the Enneagram as well. I feel like I've taken every personality test under the sun. I've taken the Enneagram, and to me, it felt more like a relating tool than something for myself. This is my group. If I'm a peacemaker, like they title it. And then, so if I'm a peacemaker, I will want to look for this type of group. So it's more of like a puzzle matching piece, and they all have puzzle matching pieces to them to a certain extent. What I like about those two particular personality tests is it gives me traits. So, so, like at PDA, for example, when I'm working with someone to build an authentic or authority marketing strategy for the dental practice, I will go into the core values, and then I will ask the team what key characteristics and behaviors make up that specific core value. So I think it's really good because it gives us in a test those key characteristics, those behaviors that person has that would point to being attentive or being compassionate or whatever, your other core values are. I would be looking to marry the two together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Joanne had us go through and do the code of ethics where we defined out 2, 3, and sometimes 4, things that we came up with. And then using that in our interview, and then also then verifying with the new hire, what are some ways that you demonstrated this week? And if you knock down, your 3 or 6 core values, that you're that are most important to you as a team, then the other stuff will just be kind of falling in place, like, hey, I need you to take out the trash, like it's just.
What is trainable? That sounds to me like the things that are trainable versus personality.
Yep. I mean, so we all love someone that has a great personality. Who's going to hire a bad personality? But it leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
I don't know, maybe an insurance adjuster. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a job where emotion doesn't necessarily mean anything. It doesn't, personality, it's an analytical thing.
Yeah. Just think about this. Like if someone was looking to, this is just macabre, but like if someone were like, well, we're looking to hire a CIA killer and we need to, I'm just saying, like it's weird, but like, and someone were like, we need someone who's emotionless, it's just like, I suppose, they could be like,
okay. I'm following you now. I was like a CIA killer.
Yeah. But, it'd be like, okay, that's the kind of person that we're, looking for this
assassin
program. Yeah. An assassin. Then it's just like, well, then you want someone who blends in, doesn't have any personality, no guilt, no, basically kind of like
you make me want to Google predictive index for assassin.
Right. But, so in other words, someone could say, well, I thought you said hire on personality. It's like, well, true for the job.
Right.
Your point for each job, but front desk person is going to be different than the dentist who you want to act and be authoritative. As opposed to receptive to, people coming in and whatnot. But I think my take home message was, what are your core values? Then with your team, define what those core values are, explain them through examples with your code of ethics. A side note, I like the disc profile. I find a lot of people that are actually in the steady column work well with me. Why? Because I've fired so many people over, 17 years that don't fit into a certain little niche within the disc profile. It's just kind of funny. Yeah. Or they quit. I don't want to make it sound like, like it's something.
It's not a right fit is what it sounds like. So, outside of this personality parameter,
yes,
it tends to not be a great fit within the disc profile.
Right. And yet they could go to the office down the street and that other dentist might, click with that kind of person and go, man, Chad fires all the wrong people. He keeps all the ones that are in the steady column. And I love all the compliant people.
Do you interview and ask scenario type questions? So like demonstrating being attentive works. That's a good example of that. But do you demonstrate, do you ask them to talk about a situation where they were working with other team members that would demonstrate whether or not they were kind of leaning towards the stable or the compliant side? How does that come out?
I like that staying as a rhetorical question because that's a really good question. Personally, I don't. I almost wonder if my office manager, Sally, does. But at the same time, I don't micromanage, which is weird for a lot of dentists. Who will admit, a lot of dentists will admit that they're micromanager. I do not. And that's one problem with not micromanaging is, you could be like, what are the 10 questions that your office manager asks? I don't know. It just seemed like a good fit. And, and I looked it over and I was like, yep. What do you think?
That's typical above the line talk right there. That's big picture vision.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, that's a nice way to put it, but micromanagers as a derogatory, they're going to hear that and go, that's so stupid. Why does that guy, but it's like, just hear me out. it's my personality. And so it works well for me. If you want to know and have a written discourse on all 10 questions that were asked or whatever, what every answer is, I haven't done that in a long time.
Well, I hire. So, and I've hired for not 17 years, but I've hired for a long, maybe I've hired for a long time. And I'll tell you, I'm always on the lookout for ways to make it easier for both candidate and company, because I think it's an investment of time on everybody's behalf. So my quick tip is, I think you're spot on. I think asking questions that are core values related is essential, and you must do that so that you can have a great understanding. Once the skill set is aside, because you can train so much in that particular realm. I like to put the science with it. Have the test if possible as a tool. I think that's a great way to kind of check and balance in addition to references, and kind of see what their potential is, what their proclivities will be, where they're going to end up swinging one way or another. I think that those two things together are very helpful. You know, what it sounds to me like what you're saying is you want someone that's invested in the outcome of the practice.
Yeah.
And you are looking for someone that goes beyond the 9 to 5, punching in, punching out. So you want to make sure that they are aligned with you in such a way that they can be authentic. And what you don't want is someone who shows up to do the job, who leaves and has a completely different way of approaching the world. And that gets to internal marketing as well, because your team is still your business card as well. So if your team is not aligned with you, like they're fake aligned, and then they go off and then they trash you, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. But, and that's, I think the community size can vary. People will know pretty quickly whether or not someone's being authentic or not. But I think you asking about the core values, and I think pairing it with a strengths test to be able to see that, checking the references. I think that's, about the extent of what you can do, and asking pattern interrupting questions that are HR compliant, that give you that third level of why. I do 100% agree on being able to shed some of the surface tendencies of putting on my best suit and my best foot forward to impress you, and instead really getting down to below the surface so that you can get a picture and a glimpse of who that person really is.
Yep.
I think that's what you're saying. Yeah.
That's good synergy, good synopsis, and good understanding of each other. Core values matter, making sure that in the interview that those line up, not only business, like your business, but personally, and then, going into some of the science stuff that might help give you some objectives, standards on finding that person, and whether, they're the right fit for you.
And you know what I would also do? Okay, my bonus tip for this, I would test out the rockstar team members that you love. So pick your personality profile. That might be DISC, it might be Clifton Strengths Finder, it might be Predictive Index. There's tons. You can go find one, play with it, doctors, have fun, figure out which one kind of speaks to you. I would go directly to the team that you love and test them and see what competencies show up. And that'll give you an idea for when you're scaling and when you're bringing on another hygienist, when you're bringing on another front desk team member, you can know what you'll be kind of on the lookout for in that role.
Do you know something else I do is I either for the second interview or whatever, if it's a hygienist, for example, I'll have my 4 hygienists go to lunch with them, and then they get to decide. I don't need to really decide so much. And of course I have the final say, but if they come back and 50-50, they're like, we love her. And then the other two say, ooh,
not sure.
Right. She left without paying or something like that.
Yep.
I don't know.
Right.
Someone
whatever
like,
it is, whatever the indicators are. No, right. I like it. Well, I think that's a really great and appropriate venue for being able to have somebody let their guard down a little bit, just so that you can both share with each other. And it gives the candidate time to see the team dynamic as well, because it could be on the flip side the same for them. They could they could walk away from that luncheon and say, whoa, too many red flags about these team members, or vice versa. I think that's a great idea.
Yep. So, yeah, along your lines was my bonus. It's like starting to become this PSS postscript.
We have a lot of postscripts here.
I know. So sorry, but yeah, you know what? It's because you had a good point, and I was just like, man, yeah, we do that. Go to lunch, and I don't choose. Like if it's the assistants or the admin or the hygienist or whatever, I have them come on. Or even when I've had associates and stuff, I have my existing associates go with them and say, what do you think? Are they a good fit? Based on what we're about, do you feel like they're what we're about? Yeah.
I think that sums it up.
Thanks for listening. We'll discuss more at a later podcast.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.